A few years back, I built this barbecue island and poured the concrete countertop as well. I used a company called Concrete Countertop Solutions, really great company. They provide the breakaway form edges, the glass reinforced fibers, a lot of other items. So the pour went well, and then I covered it in about 4 coats of bare concrete countertop acrylic. But over the years, it has not weathered well. There's odd wear patterns you can see right here that match like the underneath plywood. I don't know how that happened. There's little divots that would occur in the concrete top sealer that where moisture would get underneath it and cause these darker circles, blotchy colors. So I want to resurface this entire top, grind it down, and recoat it. So I went up onto Amazon and picked up the least expensive wet grinder I could find. It's a Vevor, and some diamond pads that it came with, and also a 2-part epoxy concrete sealer, which I hope will really vastly improve the look and feel of this barbecue island. Let's get to it. One thing I learned about this wet grinder, and it's probably can apply to all wet grinders, is that the more water you can get on that surface, the better. I first started off by just trying to spray it with a water bottle, and it did not do anything to the concrete top. It almost seems like the water is necessary for the diamond disc to activate and start grinding away. So the more water, the better. I was pretty impressed with the 50 grit. I started off with the 50 grit disc. You can see here with just in a few minutes I was able to do that square. That 50 grit disc lasted the entire run of the barbecue island. I ground down probably about 90% of that disc, and so it did last. I'm pretty impressed with the disc and the grinder as a whole. It's got a nice solid rubber shield around the motor, and it also has a GFI, a ground fault switch built into the power cord. I had to be a little bit careful about trying to avoid swirl, like grinder swirl marks when I was resurfacing this. So if there was like a chunky divot in the top of the barbecue island and I had to dig in a little bit deeper with the grinder, if you don't kind of feather it, or if you dig in deep, you'll see the grinding swirl marks. So just be wary of that. I did end up doing 3 grinding runs on the entire top. So I did a 50 grit, then I went to a 200 grit, and then I went to a 400 grit. Took me about 6 hours total, and the top came out really smooth. You can see like little flecks of silver and black and copper in the aggregate. I used Home Depot's sand topper as the aggregate when I initially poured this barbecue island top. I do have an entire 2-part series video of me building this entire barbecue island. If you want to go back and check it out, you can look at my list of videos. The sealant I picked up, I think it was called 327, and more than likely has to do with the fact that it's a 3-2 mixture of those two parts, and then it's a 1-to-7 mixture of water. So the name of the game when it comes to this particular product and you're sealing concrete is get that concrete to drink up as much of this solution as possible. So you're going to flood coat it. Make sure you put a sheet down around any edges so you don't want anything to fall on your concrete floor because it will stain as well. But yeah, again, it's a 3-2 mixture. You got to stir it for 3 minutes. And with that mixture, then with the first flood coat, it's a 1-to-7 ratio of water to that 3-2 mixture. I did 2 more coats after that. So the first coat, you let it dry for a day. The next day I came back and I did a 3-2 mixture and then 1-to-4 water, and then I did a 3-2 mixture and a 1-to-2 water. Between the second and third coat, I only let it dry for about an hour or two. And also between the first and second coat, I did a light hand sanding with 400 grit sandpaper. I also chose to spray down the countertop with water on the very first application. And my logic was that sometimes when you're putting on sealant on concrete, the variables or the sealant will soak in maybe thicker or weaker in some sections and cause blotchiness. So I thought maybe if I sprayed it with a little bit of water to begin with, it might even out the absorption rate of the sealant into the concrete on that first go round so the color is more even. I think it did a good job, I'm not so sure. So I would pour coat after coat on this, and once I kind of visually saw that the concrete could not absorb any more of the sealant, that's when I moved on to another section. But when you get to that last flood coat and within that session it won't drink anymore, you'll start to see the roller creating little valleys and mountains of the sealant on top of the concrete. And you don't want that to dry. So you want to have a second, fresh, brand new hard roller that you want to put on so you can knock down those peaks and valleys of the sealant on top of the concrete before it dries. I used a flat version of this sealant. They do offer gloss and satin or semi-gloss, but I went with straight flat. This particular sealant product actually had no smell to it at all. So I had some mouth coverings or respirators and stuff to on standby. But when I cracked it open, no VOCs at all that I could detect. This is the next day, and I think it's the final third coat. And each subsequent coat, definitely it drinks a lot less of the product. So if you're mixing again, make sure you reduce it by even less than half if you're doing multiple coats. I had a lot of leftover on one of the coat runs, so I just used the excess and brushed it onto the top section of this faux stone. I was a little worried that it might make it dark permanently, but it did not. It lightened up, and the top and the bottom still matched pretty well. But I just did this top section with the sealant to protect it from stains and stuff. So here's the top after a few days of drying. Turned out great. I like the way it looks. You can now see the aggregate. It'd be even cooler, I think, if when I pour this concrete countertop, if I used a thicker stone aggregate, you'd be able to see that stone coming through more as it grinded down. But yeah, the little flecks of copper and gray and black look great. When you touch it, it's almost as smooth as stone. No more divots. And in a minute, I'm going to do a stain test with a bunch of sauces on top. I did use a wet wipe to clear off all of these items, and the only one that left a little bit of a visible stain was the mustard, but I was able to get it off by the next day anyway. It wasn't that difficult. So the sealant, the 3 coats of that 327 mix seemed to do really well. Only time will tell to see how the entire top survives outdoor like this.